Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title and the thumbnail for this video would suggest, we're talking about the lockdown again, just sort of the overall situation here in Bangkok, Greater Thailand. And I came upon an article. I saw this in the print edition. I've actually got the print edition here, Bangkok Post, Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. And the title is Public Urged to Follow the Rules. That was the headline, Public Urge to Follow the Rules. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of an odd headline, but okay. And, you know, I've done some videos on, I kind of think some of the, the journalistic narrative on this whole issue has been somewhat condescending, to say the least. But within that, I'm going to go ahead and quote from BangkokPost.com because I pulled out my notes on this and did it all online. Again, BangkokPost.com, public urge to follow the rules. Quoting directly, Dr. Kittiatipum Wongrajit, Public Health Permanent Secretary, said that, and let's be clear, this is the Public Health Permanent Secretary, quoting further, said that both infection and death tolls were trending closely with government modeling, and it would only take a small swing further in the direction of prudence to bring COVID-19 under control in Thailand. Now, I thought that was notable, but more importantly, I thought this was really interesting. He said that as 75 to 80% of deaths were among the elderly with underlying health conditions, this was the demographic the government was concentrating on vaccinating as its top priority. That was a really interesting note there, notation. And again, Bangkok Post, BangkokPost.com. Urge folks to go check out that article. A lot of information in there. But I found that really compelling. Again, I want to quote that again. He said that as 75 to 80% of deaths were among the elderly with underlying health conditions, this was the demographic the government was concentrating on vaccinating as its top priority. And that certainly makes sense. And we've seen a lot of information out there about how that's worked. That's been a good tactic to use in other countries. But when I heard this, I thought to myself, wow, 75 to 80% of deaths were among the elderly with underlying health conditions. So we're going to pull out some of these numbers, and this is actually from Johns Hopkins University, coronavirus.jhu.edu/data/mortality, pulled up Thailand. Total deaths, according to them, and this is the most recent data they've got, is 6,066 total deaths. Okay, so presumed conservatively, 75 to 80% were among the elderly with underlying conditions. So that number is 4,549.5 of 6,066. So the total deaths of the non-elderly folks with underlying health conditions, presumably, would be that other 25%. And that total to date, and bear in mind, these numbers go all the way back into March, April of 2020. Total number there is 1,516.5 deaths as of the most up-to-date numbers we've got right here. Now, I'm definitely not saying that elderly and infirm deaths are something to be ignored. That isn't at all what I'm saying. It's terrible, and certainly we need to deal with that. And I'm certainly not saying that it's anything trivial that 1,516.5 people died in the 18 months going back to March 2020, or however many months it's been at this point. But what I am saying is, again, what I've been saying, and I'm sure many people that are watching these videos probably think of me as something of a broken record. You know, it would be nice to see a little bit more of the cost-benefit analysis being done with respect to this overarching policy, because again, you know, we've just extended these lockdowns further. You know, it's having a devastating impact on the economy. You know, this latest round, it really does beg the question whether or not most of these businesses are even going to come back, or if so, how many of them come back. Now, the one nice thing in Thailand is, you know, Thai businesses, as anybody has seen here, they can be set up very ad hoc and kind of on a quote unquote on a shoestring and get things going again. But and just as a comparison to understand these numbers, because I know there's folks that may otherwise want to be tourists here to Thailand that it kind of freaks them out when they see our press. I just want to be clear. Thailand, as far as total confirmed cases, again, according to Johns Hopkins University, jhu.edu, well, coronavirus.jhu.edu, total confirmed cases in Thailand is 736,522. Total deaths is 6,066. So that means the percentage rate of death is 0.8%. And most importantly, to many minds, is the deaths per 100,000, as that kind of allows you to compare other countries. Deaths per 100,000 in Thailand is 8.71. The United States is showing 35,739,551 total cases with 616,718 total deaths. And then that's a 1.7% fatality rate, case fatality rate. And they're looking at total deaths per 100,000 as 187.89. Again, comparing the United States to Thailand, a little bit kind of comparing apples and oranges, but deaths per 100,000 are deaths per 100,000. Perhaps maybe a better example from the West might be the United Kingdom. Total cases in the United Kingdom, 6,070,873. Total deaths, 130,585. That's a 2.2% case fatality rate, and they're looking at deaths per 100,000 of 195.39. Again, nobody's pointing fingers or anything. My point is there's been a lot of sensationalism, in my opinion, a certain level of hysteria sort of surrounding all of this issue here in Thailand, and I don't know what the answer is precisely, but I do know lockdown has had a severe impact on the economics here, and you can see that daily, not to mention other issues. But on top of that, when you start looking at these numbers, and again, this is from coronavirus.jhu.edu, Johns Hopkins University, and you start looking at these numbers, and then you really start drilling down into it and understand, the elderly need, and those with underlying conditions, it certainly makes sense that those folks, they need to have as much mitigation in place as possible. But for the overall population, I think there is some argument to be made that perhaps this whole thing is not quite the threat to the general population that perhaps a lot of the press headlines make out. And this is especially an acute thing to think about when you're looking at the costs in terms of the economy from these initiatives, and you're comparing it against the benefits. And it's just, in my opinion, once you start looking at it from that perspective, especially the knock-on impacts, the long-term ramifications, especially for here in Thailand and the folks here in Thailand, the economic ramifications of this could really reverberate for a number of years, and it could really have negative consequences. And hopefully, maybe a more nuanced approach to looking at this whole issue, folks will come up with that sooner rather than later.